This is a 2023 Honda HR-V, the second generation of Honda's little ute that is all new, grown up, and a lot bigger. The first generation Honda HR-V was built from the same platform as the Honda Fit and debuted in 2016. This one is built upon the same platform as the Honda Civic, and that on its own gives you a sense of how much bigger this thing must be. And as a result, the HR-V is bigger in every dimension and has a bigger engine too. Not a bad thing. More specifically, this is a Honda HR-V all-wheel drive EXL painted in Nordic Forest Pearl, which is a $395 optional color. Being an EXL makes it the highest of 3 trims available for the HR-V above the LX and Sport trims. And that means you get things like leather seats, dual zone climate control, and a moonroof. Fancy. As I said, my test car is all-wheel drive, which is available on every trim as long as you're willing to pay an extra $1,500. It is front-wheel drive otherwise. My name is Robin Warner, by the way, an experienced engineer and magazine editor, and I'm also bigger this year. The Honda HR-V and I have so much in common. We're so alike. I review all kinds of cars, from a $25,000 Ford Maverick to a $425,000 Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I'll happily jump into Honda Accords, BMW M3s, and Porsche 911 GT3s. And I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. The base price for a front-wheel drive Honda HR-V LX is $24,895. The all-wheel drive EXL starts at $30,195, and my Nordic Forest Pearl paint-clad test car goes for $30,590. With that, why don't I pull over and show you in and outside of this car in a bit more detail. Well, here it is, the second generation 2023 Honda HR-V in the flesh. It is a huge improvement in terms of styling over the first generation HR-V, at least for someone in my age group, and I think it's more appropriately sized as well. Let's take a closer look. Looking at the car from the front, it is actually wider, but they also stylistically work to emphasize the width of this car. It also has a longer hood than before to give it a bit more just stature in general. It also has this lovely gloss black mesh grille here just beneath the Honda emblem, which is a respectable size, it must be said. And then we have more gloss black down low with a lower spoiler there, more mesh. I think it all contrasts the body color nicely. Now, if you get the sport trimmed Honda HR-V, these are different elements here, and that one stylistically stands out. One other point, we do have nice LED headlights right here, and they are big headlight assemblies right there. And then beneath that down below, these are functional air curtains to blow air into the front wheel well and keep too much air pressure from building up under the wheel well. Looking at the car in profile, you get a better sense of its shape and size. It is bigger in every dimension: width, height, length, and wheelbase, although just a couple tenths of an inch when it comes to width. I'll go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen right now, and I'll add the differences from the outgoing HR-V as well to give you a touch of perspective. It is much longer than before. That's the biggest difference. Now, in terms of shape, we have pretty short front and rear overhangs, a little bit longer than I expected, to be quite honest, but I still think it's an elegant shape, and it still largely follows the classic two-box shapes of today's SUVs, but we do have a bit of curve in the hood, and we have this nice piano black trim around the windows and a nice character line that runs all the way through, which I think is a nice touch. It looks pretty similar to the Honda Civic in terms of styling, and that's intentional, and also, in my opinion at least, a good thing. And I do also have a lot more information about the HR-V in the description. These are 17-inch aluminum alloy wheels, which is actually the same size as the base model. However, it does have a different finish. The sport trim, which is the middle trim, does actually have an 18-inch wheel and a different shape. Again, stylistically, the sport trim does stand out a fair amount. Also, you can't really see it, but the gaps for the air curtains to blow air out this way, they're right here and easy to see from the front of the wheel well. Overall, I think it's an attractive looking wheel and an appropriate size for an SUV of this size. And the fact that we have 60 series rubber to work with is a good thing. It helps absorb some of the bumps and heaves on the road and smooths out the ride. Also, even though we are talking about a small B segment SUV, we do have disc brakes in the front and in the back. Looking at the back of the car, again, a massive improvement over the outgoing model in my opinion. Nice clean lines, sleek looking taillights right here, which are actually quite large, and nice integration of body color to other colors down at the bumper. And one pet peeve of mine that always just grinds at me are the fake exhaust finishers. Not here. The one and only exhaust is underneath the bumper right there, where it should be, out of the way. Beautiful. Now, if you were to get a sport trimmed HRV, a couple things would stand out. This rear spoiler, which must create hundreds of pounds of downforce, is gloss black instead of body colored like it is here. And the exhaust down below would actually have a chrome finisher. Ironic, right? Anyway, let's take a look inside. There's a lot of space to check out. The lift gate is nice and easy and light to open, and once you do open it, you get 24 cubic feet of storage behind the second row. That's nice and ample. As you can see, the base is right here, and I've got pretty much a full arm's length before I get to the top of the back seat, so pretty nice. And if you lift this piece up here, there's a little bit more storage underneath that as well. You also have a 12-volt outlet right there, so if you need to plug in something, you have that access as well. And of course, there's a couple mounting points back here and up here. And yes, if you need more than 24 cubic feet of space, that is very easy to do. And just like that, I have 55 cubic feet of storage and a nice flat loading floor on top of that. When you fold the seat backs down of the second row, the seat bottoms actually fold a bit as well to give it more space to keep that loading floor nice and flat. That's a nice touch. That's an ergonomic win. To give you a sense of how much space 55 cubic feet is, I have a new test. It's called the Does My Bike Fit test. So let's see how that goes right now. There you go. The Honda HR-V, second generation one at least, will easily carry your road bike. All right, let's take a look inside. Just go ahead and start it now. So before I actually get into the second row, I wanted to show you what I was talking about with folding the seats. As the seat back folds down, the seat bottom, you can see it moves too to make more space for the seat back, and it rests lower as a result. So that's a really nice feature. I love that kind of attention to detail. That's what really helps make Honda so good at ergonomics, to think of these little things. But to the seat itself, legroom isn't bad. I have, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches of legroom right here. And the seat bottom's a little bit low, but considering the size of SUV we're talking about, it's really not bad. I would say that's right around 90 degrees of bend in my knees, maybe just the tiniest touch less. And I do also have headroom as well, about 1 inch of it. I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall for reference, and I generally think these seats are quite comfortable. Now, if you're carrying 5 people and you have to use the middle seat, that's going to be a pinch. There's not much room there. I can cover it with the length of my fingers here and my thumb. But if it's just 2 of you, it's pretty comfortable, and you can see there's a little bit of contour in the seats to hold you in place a tiny touch better as well. It's pretty Spartan back here. You know, we do have window controls and a bottle holder, those types of things, but no USB ports or anything like that. And sadly, this does not fold down. I do not have cup holders. I will have to hold my cup myself. Ah, the agony. Anyway, more luxurious up front. Let's go there. When we go to the front, the benefits of having the EXL trim really do start to stand out, and it starts with the seats. These are leather seats right here, and that's EXL trim only. And they do have additional shoulder support in these seats, also EXL only. So you have a bit more support and nicer materials on the seats, and we haven't even gotten in them yet. We also have pretty darn decent upper bolsters and lower bolsters here. So the seat does hold you in place pretty well. It is 8-way power adjustable, as you can see right there. And we do have the typical controls on the door, and our traction control button is right to the left of the steering wheel. You do have manually adjusting tilt and telescope. The lever is right there. Here is your 7-inch digital instrument cluster, which Honda calls the driver information interface screen. Now this is really interesting. This is all digital in a lot of ways. That speedometer right there is lit up as well, and the tachometer, of course. But let me turn the engine off. You can see that's a full screen. That is a real gauge that's right there. So it's actually a real gauge with a digital lit display, and then a full-on 7-inch screen right there. You can see the Honda badge. That was an interesting little detail that I found surprising, but works fine for me. And just to the right of that, here is your 9-inch center console touchscreen. Now, on the Sport and LX trims, this is a 7-inch screen, so EXL is alone for getting the 9-inch screen. It's also alone in getting wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It is wired for the other two trims. But no matter, because you do have an easy access USB port right there, and a second one tucked away back here. And since we're back here, I'll quickly show you that we have this dual level. So we have some extra storage above some of these buttons right here. Yes, it is an electric parking brake. And you also have brake hold and hill descent control, which is a nice touch. And also drive modes. I'll get to those in just a second. Moving back up, also on EXL only, is this wireless Qi charging pad right here. And just above that, also exclusive to EXL, dual zone climate control. It'll single zone on the Sport and LX models. We do also have heated front seats. That is available on the Sport and the EXL trims. But if we keep going up, we go back to exclusivity, because it is EXL alone that gets the moonroof. And here's your operations for it right there. And you might have noticed this grid pattern right here just beneath the center console. That does have the vents for the HVAC system incorporated into that. This is extremely similar to the new Honda Civic, the 11th generation Honda Civic. And I think it's a cool look, adds a touch of class to this interior. Okay, drive modes. We have 3 drive modes. You select them right here, and they show up on the instrument cluster right here. You get normal, econ, and snow. These are powertrain adjustments. There's not an adjustable suspension in here, anything like that, but it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility there. Also, the transmission itself, the CVT transmission, does have an S and an L. I'm assuming, I actually don't know this for fact, but I'm assuming sport and low. And when I get to some tests later on, I will in fact have the transmission in sport mode. And hey, no time like the present. Let's get back to the drive and get to those tests. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. The one and only engine available in the new HR-V is a naturally aspirated 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine that makes 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. It is the exact same engine that is also offered in the base Honda Civic sedan and hatchback. And that engine is a virtually square bore and stroke, right around 86 millimeters for both, and has a 10.8:1 compression ratio, 4 valves per cylinder, and VTEC technology. Finally, good news, it does run on regular fuel. Now, on its own, those aren't blockbuster numbers for any car these days, but it's totally competitive for its class and a healthy jump from the outgoing HR-V's 1.8-liter engine. That engine managed 141 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque, and its lower torque peak came at 100 RPM higher revs. So this is definitely more torque and a broader range, and of course more horsepower as well. There is also only one transmission offered in the HR-V, and that is a continuously variable transmission. And no, it's not great. Yes, I would prefer a standard automatic transmission. The 10-speed that Honda builds and puts in some of its other cars is fantastic, but as CVTs go, this is a reasonably good one and behaves well. And more so than that, this even tries to fool you into thinking it's a regular transmission. When you give it full throttle, it runs to the red line and then has these step changes in the revs to fake gears for you, which, you know, for some that's something, but ultimately it's not for me. As I mentioned, these are standard front-wheel drive cars. It is a transversely mounted engine after all, but all-wheel drive is available on all the trims, and it's the same increase in price, $1,500. Most importantly though, this is a good foundational engine. Naturally aspirated, linear power delivery, a nice and healthy 6,800 RPM redline. It feels balanced and smooth throughout its rev range and gives out a nice and mellow exhaust tone. As 4 cylinders go, this is among the best. When compared to the many hybrids that are out today, fuel economy is only so-so, but really pretty solid considering this is an all-wheel drive SUV. You get 25 miles to the gallon in the city, 30 miles to the gallon on the highway, 27 combined. Now, if you do go front wheel drive, that does improve a bit. I'll go ahead and put those numbers up on the screen so you can check that out. But hey, what's more fun than fuel economy? Accelerating. Accelerating is always fun, and I had to test it, so let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have the transmission in sport mode and the traction control reduced, and I'm in the normal driving mode. So, all right, coming to a complete stop. We have all-wheel drive, so I'm not concerned about traction. Give it some brake torque. A little over 2,000 RPM. Here we go. Yeah, okay. A little bit of a jerk back, but you can tell we don't have tons of power to work with. But once we get moving, the CVT builds revs pretty well, and we are getting some faux shifts, and we're accelerating pretty decently. Yeah, I have to say, this is pretty decent acceleration. Considering everything, this is completely adequate, completely reasonable for this class of SUV, and I do have to say, it is a noticeable improvement over the 1.8 liter in the first generation HRV. So in that sense, this is a big improvement, and generally I would say it's competitive for the class. Right, now this is based on the 11th generation, new for 2022 Honda Civic, and that is a brilliantly handling car, be it the sedan, the hatchback, and definitely the SI model. Moreover, this now has a 4-wheel independent suspension. The last generation HRV had a twist beam, torsional beam axle for the rear, so it was solid rear axle. And all of those things combined got me pretty excited to see how this thing handles. Of course, I had to test that as well. Let me show you that. All right, everybody, time for a handling test in this tall all-wheel drive Civic. See how this thing goes. I do have the traction control reduced, and I do have the transmission in sport, and I am in the normal driving mode, which is the sportiest driving mode we've got, I do believe. So let's see how this goes. Yeah, reasonable pickup. Definitely better than the outgoing HRV, that part's for sure. Yeah, respectable grip. You know, a fair amount of body roll. But considering with the sophistication of the suspension, it's pretty reasonable. Okay, fair amount of understeer when you really lean into it, and more of that body roll as well. This thing does want to bounce around a little bit. It's certainly not as refined as the 11th generation Civic is, of which this car is based. You know, front end's a little bit lazier, the body's definitely more roly-poly, but you know, it's still totally competent. It's really easy to feel the limit and easy to keep it in the direction you want. It's stable, it's comfortable in that way. So yeah, totally competent at what it does, but not terribly engaging. In regards to handling, let me summarize just a little bit more. The seats were very comfortable, very supportive, and everything about what that car did was totally competent, and it was even a little bit of fun. It's just clear that the engineers had tuned this car more for ride and comfort than handling prowess. Speaking of, well, let's talk about that ride and comfort. It is generally quite good. The HRV has a nice smooth ride, handles bumps and imperfections and heaves in the road with no trouble at all. Because the seats are nice and supportive, they're also plenty comfortable, and all the switchgear and everything is easily placed. So I actually quite like the ride of this car, especially considering the class of SUV that it is. Going four-wheel independent suspension definitely helped in that matter, and the engineers did a great job with tuning for the ride. By the way, Honda gave these seats a name. They're called body stabilizing seats because they have more support than the outgoing HR-V did, and I give that a thumbs up. And all the above I said, of course, is true on roads like this or on the interstate. I had to test it there as well, and also play around with all the driving aids, which Honda calls Honda Sensing. So let me show you that test now. All right, everybody, time for a quick stint on the interstate. I do now have the car in Econ mode. I have the transmission back in drive, and of course traction control is all back on. I have a feeling this will be a nice and pleasant ride, and we're also going to test the latest iteration of driving aids that we've got here. You know, definitely adaptive cruise control. Honda has a new lane keeping assist, stuff like that, and give it a go. All right, cruise control is set. We're going with the flow of traffic right around 78 miles an hour. Right now I do have the adaptive cruise control set, but not the lane keeping assist. There is a separate button down on the steering wheel for that, so I'll turn that on now. All right, now I've got the steering assist on and a green light say that is working, so I will take my hands off the wheel. We are currently going around a subtle curve right now and tracking that curve pretty well. Yes, I will say that this is an improvement over outgoing lane keeping assist that I've felt before. I'm getting the request to put my hands back on the steering wheel. But yeah, we're definitely more centered than some Hondas have been in the past. Depends on the car you're in. It can be quite good, but it's still, as a brand as a whole, it still seems like Toyota's lane tracing assist is best at keeping you right in the center of the lane. But that was still quite respectable. We do have a lot of things that pop up on the instrument cluster. Let me quickly show you that. So as you can see, we have the adaptive cruise light that stays green, and then we have the steering wheel with a couple of dotted lines to show the steering assist is on, and then we have the car in the lane here that shows that we're in the center of the lane. So if I veer towards the outside of the lane, that goes red to say, hey, you're departing the lane. So anyway, that's what you see on the instrument cluster. In general, we have a very pleasant ride. This goes down the road nice and smoothly, and all the controls on the center console and the switch gear, everything's easy to read, everything's easy to reach, easy to use. The seats are comfortable. It's a very, very pleasant place to be, and we got pretty darn decent fuel economy as well, considering that this is all-wheel drive. The one downside to all of that is wind noise. It is fairly loud inside this HR-V. You can definitely hear a lot of road noise, decent amount of wind noise, different gusts and things like that. So that would probably get to you over time. But if the wind noise doesn't bother you, if the noise in the car doesn't bother you, this is a fantastic road trip car. Otherwise, very pleasant down the road, nice ride, etc., etc. So yeah, considering the class of vehicle this HR-V is, I'd say it's competitive. It's just not quite as good as some other cars out there in keeping wind and road noise out. Real quick, I'll just mention that we also have quite a bit of airbags in this car. We actually have 10 airbags, including 2 airbags for the knees for the front passengers. So what do we have in this second generation 2023 Honda HR-V? We have a really nicely sized, ergonomically smart, spacious SUV that I would say is really close to perfect for a young couple that have not quite had kids. You still get good fuel economy, you get all-wheel drive traction if you need it, and you do have lots of space and all the functionality you need. And if you can fork over enough dough to go EXL, you get actually a pretty decent amount of luxuries as well. Now, obviously, the ride isn't as refined or as quiet as more premium SUVs out there, or even some of the bigger SUVs in the mainstream market. Considering the class it's in, that's a critical component. It's quite competitive and really quite nice. This is the type of car that would tick a lot of boxes for conveniences you need to get from point A to point B. And that also makes it true for young couples, but maybe also empty nesters that are looking to downsize. It's just not quite as driver enthusiast friendly as some other Hondas that are out there. But for those folks, you're probably better off getting a hot hatch anyway. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. Doing so helps me out quite a lot. And if you're interested in a car like this, you should also definitely check out my video on the Toyota Corolla Cross. What Toyota did and what Honda did are very, very similar. The Corolla Cross essentially is a second generation CHR in a lot of ways, and it is a much more grown up, much more functional version than the CHR was. So that and this car actually have a lot in common, and I got to test drive that one a few months ago. You should definitely check it out. And I've also tested a bunch of other stuff, including some of those hot hatches for the enthusiasts. So definitely look around and check it out if you can. And if you do, I hope you like it. Okay, goodbye for now.